Good morning once again, everybody, and we're going to talk about professionalism just one more time. I'm sure I'm probably going to talk about it again, but this refers mostly to organizations that operate in right to work states. Professionalism, yes, you're very professional, professionally breaking all of the laws that you possibly can, because I can tell you from personal experience and the experiences of others the amount of and let me hit on this core aspect whenever they talk about professionalism, okay, because especially if you're a guy like me and you're trying to work a normal job, you will run into naturally you will run into management or supervisors telling you you should be more professional. First and foremost, professional starts at $100,000 a year. Okay. That's what professional starts at. You're not paying just a random grunt $100,000 a year. So you are not entitled to professionalism. You're entitled to whatever the hell walks through the door. All right. And every company will make the argument that, oh, we got people lining up around the block. And part of the shrinkage of jobs is totally not tied to the CEOs of some of these primarily tech companies coming out and saying, it's about time we stick it to the workers. They had it real good during the coof years, and now it's time to pull it all back. All right. For instance, another perfect example. All right, we're returning to the office. We're doing this. We're going to make this happen. Oil prices, bitch. All right. Right there. Right there. Literally. Oil prices. Just oil prices alone, and the fact that most countries at the beginning of the oil crisis, the oil shock, are talking about cutting it to essentially mandatory 3 to 4 days a week and nothing more. All right, which of course, if you're going to cut back the amount of hours that people can work, you also kind of got to force up wages, or you're going to have even more competition in the labor market, and that will create a destabilized environment. So you have to cut hours and increase wages to make up for the shortage of oil. Anyway, whenever companies talk about professionalism, the only professional thing about professionalism is corporations fucking people over. All right, their own workforce, their own customers. They do it all the time. But the professionalism aspect is learning how to cover up the crimes of the corporation in enough of the double speak. All right, where you say things, but you don't actually say anything. All right, you just babble on about shit until people forget what the hell the question is, what the hell the point is, and if they don't forget, you just move on to the next question. The reality is, all right, like for instance, many, many, many years ago, I worked for a company that was overloading trailers. Now, this company in particular had cut deals with neighboring states that they drove through and operated in and were supplying facilities in. They went to those state Department of Transportations, okay, and cut a deal saying that they would never load a trailer beyond X amount of weight, all right, and in return, their drivers got to skip all the way stations. Now, if you're a normal everyday trucker, if you're solo on your own, I'm gonna bet that it's a lot harder time. That's gonna be a lot harder time to try to get a sweetheart deal like that because, of course, it slows down your times. Every single state that you have to go through, they have to stop at a way station at the entry and exit. That slows down your overall fulfillment time. So, cutting a sweetheart deal like that is fantastic, except for the fact that I know one company that does it. I know other companies that surely do it as well. And even if the information is brought to the state DOTs that, hey, they're overloading their trailers, almost nothing will be done because regulatory capture in the right to work states is so severe that You honestly, corporations could legitimately kill people. All right. And I mean this, like a while, like ages ago during the first run, when DJT said he could, just shoot somebody in the middle of Times Square and nothing would happen. Corporations are in that position. All right. In a lot of areas, there's one primary corporation operating where if it went bankrupt, state revenues decline massively. The tax receipts fall off the cliff. All right. So even if they're not directly captured through bribery or any other means, they are captured on the back end because if you do anything to hurt the corporation, all of a sudden you have factory towns dying. You have entire fucking areas of your state or local area, municipality completely collapse, tax revenues decline, and then all of the major retailer, all right, they end up going out of business too, or just cutting ties because they can't generate the same kind of revenue anymore. Because the people working at these more often than not toxic large employers are also the ones making the real as close as you can get to decent money compared to everybody else in the area. And essentially, every other business in a factory town serves the people who work for the business in the factory town. All right. You lose that all of a sudden. The little restaurant that was feeding all the workers, the little head shops and stores that, deal with their nicotine and alcohol habits dry up. Everything just kind of implodes. Professionalism is just a way for managerial elite of varying levels to cover up their fucking crimes. All right. Because the reality is, it's not necessarily easy being a manager. You actually have to know the employment law, and especially when you combine it with the fact that you're trying to balance contracts working for other corporate customers, and you're trying to deal with all the other shit that's tied to the operation. You have to try to somehow be responsible and keep the legal track in mind for every single aspect of your job. All right. Now, some companies, this is what HR was for in terms of dealing with employment law. HR was there to cover the business, cover the organization, but really, for the most part, HR, a good HR department, they actually know what they're doing. But most of the HR teams in corporate America are just what's your favorite color and why people. All right, it's just girls who didn't want to work for a living and get paid very well to still fuck up the payroll. Okay, the reality is, whilst it is not, I'm not going to make the argument that being a manager is easy. I am going to say, fuck your professionalism. Okay. Because literally the only time that I have heard professionalism come out of, you need to be more professional, come out of management's mouths are when they are flagrantly breaking laws. Whether it's employment law, whether it's, Department of Transportation, in state and out of state, wherever they're operating. It's, it is what it is. All right, everybody knows this, for example. Like there's been more of a push to unionize lately. This has been growing for a couple of years now. Now, given it hasn't exactly been growing in the areas you really want to see it, all right, it's been showing up in the lower end retail jobs, at least some of them, when it comes to coffee shops of a certain variety. It's been cropping up there. But the areas where you do want to see it, like maybe the rest of retail, possibly, ununionized warehouses, logistics, production facilities, they are still very harsh on any attempt to try to form unions. Okay. Union busting has never gone away. Like, for instance, there was one company I can think of that In terms of should a company have a union, this company was breaking so many rules and treating its workforce so poorly that in the back of my head, I'm just sitting here thinking, like, Jesus Christ, these people need a union just to hold back the aggressive bullshit of their management. All right, especially when, especially when logistics companies get really big contracts from really big players, they will bend over backwards to keep those contracts, even if they're, if they were the lowest bidder. In most cases, corporates are going for the lowest bidder possible, and the result is you end up with machines that run 3 times longer, that catch fire every night, or you just end up with so little equipment that you have, 60, 80, 100 people who come in to do their job, and you can only outfit like, maybe 84 people, and then the rest you have to find something else to do that you can justify them not actively working. All right. It mm, it would be so much easier if people would just be fucking honest instead of being lying, scuzzy POSs. But when it comes to management, management has to keep up the illusion that they're in power and that effectively they could just do whatever the fuck they want until they get sued. But the counter issue here is, and it's the same, it's very bad in the right to work states. The issue is all of these companies, because they are all, for the most part, divisions of corporate, these companies get access to corporate lawyers. And corporate lawyers know one thing in particular that your average person doesn't necessarily know until it bites them in the ass. And that is these companies can continue breaking the laws, all right, whether it's employment law or any other, in their professionalism. They can keep breaking the laws and they never get checked on it because the corporate lawyers know that when a location, a facility, their management has fucked up big time, the only real solution is to drag it out until whoever put in the lawsuit goes bankrupt. Okay? And most people are unwilling to, work overtime for a decade to try to get a right to the grievances. Okay. So if they could just extend the time for the lawsuit, all right, they just extend it as long as humanly possible. You will run out of energy, you will run out of will, you will run out of money, you will run out of capacity to even participate in the bullshit. And most people just end up retracting the lawsuits, having lost God knows how much money, 8 to 10 grand, could be more. And that's what ends up happening in a lot of cases. So companies, for the most part, never have a check on their bullshit. Now, a union, of course, would obviously provide a check and balance system unless the union is on the take too from corporate bullshit. But what ends up happening in that case is if you try to start a union, they will, because most workplaces have rules that they don't actually enforce until they decide to enforce them, selective enforcement, which of course is discriminatory in its own nature. But what ends up happening is if they sniff out that somebody's trying to start a union, they will do selective enforcement and they will watch that individual like a hawk. Once that individual is dealt with, they will begin to go after any of their friends at work, anybody who's connected to them, friends, family, any sympathizers. They will start going after those people one after another using the selective enforcement. Is it broad scale discrimination? Yes. Is it union busting to the point that it is illegal? Yes, abso-fucking-lutely. But unless you have your own bank of cash, all right, unless you have your own corporate-sized accounts and you can handle paying a legal team consistently to just continually tail the corporation until they run out of energy and willpower, it's a game of attrition. Um, if you can get the corporation to the point where they run out of willpower and they don't want to fucking pay anymore, then what ends up happening in most cases is corporations will try to settle out of court in order to, and it'll get posted that there was a settlement, but they will try to settle out of court to protect their brand name and their brand reputation. Okay. Now, honestly, especially with how things have been going in the US, there are a lot of organizations that have acted so poorly, okay, that they legitimately, there's a reason why no matter how bad the economy is, there are companies that you put in an application for and you hear back like that. All right, it's damn near instant. They are just dying to get you in and they're so happy to see you. And then you find out that they were completely full of shit with everything they told you. The workload is higher, the hours are longer, and the attitudes, especially after all the firings, terminations, the attitudes are interesting to say the least. I know plenty of companies like this. I know plenty of companies that are constantly looking for people. These companies have 50, well, I suppose the lowest I've seen is 20% turnover. The highest I've seen is 80. Okay. For the company I have in mind in terms of training time and the amount of expense that they lose by being flaming pieces of shit. I got to say it as it is. I'm not using names, so I'm maintaining a little bit of that quote unquote professionalism. Uh, but but the company I have in mind, I actually did the numbers for, and in order to train up with the turnover rate as it is, in order for them to get 20 employees to stick around, all right, that will stick around, they have to essentially spend, oh God, was it? Yeah, it was about a quarter million. They have to spend roughly $250,000 in training and then lose 80% of the people who come in just to keep like 20 people, 20, 30 people. I forget the exact number. Companies would rather throw away a $250,000 trying to find people who will put up with their bullshit than they will then they are willing to actually correct themselves and stop being raging assholes. Okay, I gotta tell it how it is. I gotta tell it how it is. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it because Spades, of course, does personal and business, but I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. I've seen some companies that operate pretty good. All right. But in most cases, the companies that are operating pretty good, that are actually decent, that aren't going to eventually, break past the barrier and end up in infinity lawsuits until the end of time, those companies tend to be behind the ball in terms of tech. They tend to run slower, their losses are higher, and in most cases, their good management ends up getting replaced by, the scrapers who will literally scrape the bottom of the barrel until they wear a hole through it. All right, which is unfortunate, trying to find good management, good managers, whether you're an employee or whether you are a company looking for somebody to fill a managerial role is fucking a difficult. It's fucking difficult because you've got, especially in this country, you've got people who would literally fucking throw their own under the bus to make a quick buck. All right, like they would sell. You've got grown ass people in this country who would sell their own children into slavery, like the boomers, largely. But you've got people who will sell their own children into slavery so they can make an extra 20, 30,000 a year. Okay, it it is what it is. Professionalism. Ay, and it's a thing. I feel like I gotta talk about it, especially because there is even more pressure building for more unionization efforts, which honestly I'm behind. I stand behind the idea that we need unions in this country as a counterbalance to just the absolutely reckless behavior of corporations and their upper, middle, and lower management. All right. It legitimately, legally speaking, it's reckless, but outside of the normal legal context, just how they operate day to day operations is also entirely reckless. I've seen companies do literally, oh my God, I can't even, oh, I really do wish I could name a few. I really do. I really do, but I do still hold out the hope that one day they will see the error in their ways and maybe we can help unfuck them at some point. But I've seen companies where management was literally engaging in cover-ups damn near every single week at least. They're covering things up, all right? And primarily they're covering things up where there's damage occurring to some other corporation's property. All right. Massive fucking cover ups, fires getting covered up, infrastructure damage. I've seen a lot. I've seen a lot. I've also seen the fact that apparently OSHA regulators are blind, and actually, this is another perfect example. The company in specific I'm thinking of here, conveniently, whenever a current or former employee, but mostly the current employees, whenever they threw in anonymous OSHA complaints, and I mean legit anonymous, they used different phone numbers, they jumped through hoops and shit because they knew what was going on. These people that were still working for this company put in anonymous OSHA complaints and were fired the next day. All right, of course, using selective enforcement. And, oh, hey, we just caught you doing something literally at the start of the day. Fantastic. Get the fuck out. All right. This company, within the context that we are told to believe and see the world in, should not have been able to find out who these individuals were. Okay. But conveniently, anybody who put in anonymous complaints to Occupational Health and Safety Administration was found out by the company and fired the next day in literally every single case. Every single case. Now, this company also has the wondrous ability to get probably the most blind, deaf, and dumb OSHA regulators probably on the fucking planet, assuming we're going by the official context and not the they've been regulatory captured. But this company that I'm thinking of, they literally have exposed 220-volt cable where it literally rains through the roof. The rain travels down the conduit into the first junction box, then goes into a 220-volt controller, and then drops down into, with the water still flowing through all of this, and then drops down to a thoroughly crushed, thoroughly destroyed 220-volt junction box at the floor where the water pools. This place has electrocution hazards, in addition to quite a few other hazards, but exposed wire, pooling, higher voltage electrical. Like, people could literally die at that installation. And if people who've tried to report it, all right, people who've tried to go about things the right way when it comes to reporting it to management and then management reporting it to corporate, the corporate that owns the facility, nothing ever happens. Nothing ever happened, as far as I know. But then anybody who went to OSHA about these things just got fired. All right. Did any of the OSHA complaints lead to any fines or any resolution? No. No, they didn't. All right. And because those fines would fall on the company that this one in particular is also contracted to work for, um, if any fines did go through, it would go against the base company. And then any of that, even though it was reported over years, these issues, even though it was reported to the big corporate for years and nothing ever happened, if a report comes in from one of the employees, of course, the corporate is going to take it out on their contracted corporate. And that's how things actually work. In most areas, in most cases, there are people who are like, especially women too. They tend to be more prone on, I'm going to go to OSHA, I'm going to go to state regulators, I'm going to go to federal regulators. And nothing ever happens. Because if anything ever did happen, um, corporations can pick up their operations and just move to Mexico. They could just go to China if they want to. But we're trying to bring jobs here. They don't care. They don't care. If you try to get these corporations to pay out a single fucking cent, all right, that isn't budgeted, you are going to have to fight tooth and nail to make it happen. Okay. Especially if it's in an area where they are providing the majority of jobs, again, like a factory town sort of deal. If they're providing the majority of jobs, first hand, second hand, third hand, you really have no option, because if they pick up their operations and leave, all of a sudden your entire area goes bankrupt and you go through essentially what everywhere in the Rust Belt and Coal Belt went through. Okay. Also, one thing I got to throw out there, just because it makes the most sense for normal people, and if you haven't figured this out on your own, that's fine. I got your back. Especially when it comes to those of you younger people out there. Never trust anybody in a suit. Never. Never. And if they hand you a piece of paper and ask you to sign, read that shit. Read the hell out of it. It doesn't matter if you miss a spot, all right? If you fuck up at a spot, lose your place, and have to reread it and legitimately suck up all of the hours in their day possible as you read through all of the shit and figure it out and understand it, make sure you know what the fuck you're signing. And if they ask you to sign an NDA, this is also this is kind of a big one, especially in the right to work states. Companies that one give you a an AD&D, all right, accidental death and dismemberment policy, all right, that they're paying for. If a company offers you an AD&D out of their own pocket, something's up. Two, if that company asks you to sign a non-disclosure agreement, something's up. Now, these are starting to fall out of favor because a lot of judges are throwing out the corporate NDAs because a lot of fucked up shit has been happening with these corporate employers. But accidental death and dismemberment, non disclosure agreements, anything like that. There's a third one, I can't remember what the hell it is right offhand. But if they offer it or if they put it in front of you, non compete also is a fucking joke. Fuck those. If they try to get you to sign a non compete, they can eat shit. They can pound sand. All right, they can pound sand. You as an employee, you do whatever the fuck you want. Fuck these corporates. Okay, fuck them. Legitimately, fuck them. All right, they're terrible. They are terrible in terms of how they treat people, in terms of how they operate. They are absolutely terrible. But those are the things, those are the red flags. A suit, a big smile, especially a big smile. NDAs, AD&Ds, any of that shit. that's all red flag territory. Also, another red flag territory is doing Zoom interviews. Um, it's a thing. I've seen firsthand and secondhand a lot of pyramid schemey type things. Group interviews is another good one. If it's a group interview, you should immediately just write the shit off, because if it's a group interview, it means they are specifically looking for the dumbest person in the group, all right, to sign on to what in most cases is essentially a pyramid scheme. And the one company I'm thinking of that I know does this has been religiously getting backroom deals. They essentially they force you to pay for your own training if you want to work there. Okay, and of course it's a regulated industry, so you have to cover your own training if you want to do the job. And they get a backdoor deal from everybody. They get to go into the training, but then afterwards they go out into the world and they have you target old people who are essentially damn near senile to try to sign them up for whatever good or service at regular intervals. And the way that it's structured, the way that it is actually structured, you never directly close the deal. Your supervisor or manager ends up closing the deal. And what ends up happening there, the way that the structure is set up, once they sign up for that, okay? Now, some of you out there will probably know what I'm referencing, but this is kind of big in the insurance market when it comes to premiums and the kickbacks going to agents. What ends up happening is if all of the people, so these people and their premiums become baked into your pay and the supervisor or manager above you's pay. So how these companies will actually operate is if all of these senile old timers or their kids, if they're paying attention to, the inflows and outflows of their accounts, once they start canceling, you can actually find yourself in a position where you're making negative money working for some of these businesses, quote unquote. Really, they're just glorified legal scammers, but it's the way it goes. This is the American economy, kids. Folks, boys, girls, men, women, gentlemen, gentle hoochies. This is the American economy. All right. It is largely a scam based in one form or another. You can paint anything as a scam, but legitimately the way that most corporations operate and a lot of companies operate, they are essentially legalized scamming people. All right. It's a thing. I've seen a lot of bad behavior from companies over my years. Okay. Which is exactly part of the reason why I'm tied in here, because like I would much rather get paid to help people deflect bullshit and set themselves up so they're not chronically bankrupt and hanging by a thread, because a lot of people are. A lot of people are hanging by a thread. And what is it? What's the cheapest thing we do at Spades? Give me just a moment. Uh, should definitely be in personal. Yeah, quick consults like $20. And then form is 65. All right. 20 to 65 bucks. All right. To set yourself up, especially if you're young, to set yourself up on a solid track where you're not going to bankrupt yourself and, put yourself over the edge. All right. Like you're not floating, you're not hanging by a thread. You are over the edge because you're in debt. All right. And if you ever stop paying the debt, like you're standing on a board over a cliff, and the bank and your employer and anybody else effectively who owns you at that point has their foot on the other end of the board. And if you ever stop paying, you piss off your employer, all of a sudden the banker is the only one holding the board, keeping you upright. And then if you, without a job, can't afford to fucking pay the banker anymore, they let their foot go and you go wily coyoteing over the edge straight down and whacking your head off the biggest rock you could possibly have under you. Okay, and it's never made of gold. All right, no one ever. Most people don't survive the fall. Honestly, a lot of people have lost their ass already, and I'm sure those of you out there who understand where I'm coming from with this, you don't want to have to rebuild your life. All right. Men, especially in their relations with the opposite sex, have had to rebuild their lives on average about 3 times. Okay. That's how bad it is. That is how bad it is now. You do not want to have to rebuild. You want to get a car and hold on to it. You want to get a roof over your head and hold on to it. You want to be able to not be in debt and slowly accumulate the assets and the things that you need to improve your life and make your life better. You don't want to be chained to the bank. You don't want to be chained to the government, even though unfortunately we're all chained to the fucking government. And you especially don't want to be chained to your employer because there are no loyalties. Like the best that you can get in terms of job security in this country, the best that you can get is if the turnover rate is 80%. All right. And just it makes it a lot easier to stick around. All right. Until you get on the corporation's bad side, until you get on management's bad side or a supervisor's bad side, or you become the target of a female harassment campaign. Okay. It's a thing. It happens. It happens. All right. Which I do also have to throw in there. Don't stick your pen in the company ink. Do not screw the girls at work. All right. Don't do it. Just don't do it. I know, especially with the jobs in this country, you're spending the majority of your time at work, and I do understand. I do get it. Believe me, I do. I was making the arguments ages ago. You're spending whether you're working 10 hours a day, 12 hours a day, some people working 14 hours a day, 16. You're working all these hours a day. You have no life outside of work, and you're just grinding and grinding and grinding and grinding and grinding, trying to make as much money as humanly possible up to the threshold where you start getting taxed higher. Unless you're game for paying higher taxes, by all means, if you want to work an extra month or two out of the year, essentially just for the government, state, local, and federal, by all means, go ahead. But it's a thing. If you are spending all your time at work, there is definitely the incentive there, the reasoning there. Like, well, it's not like you can go out to clubs, and depending on what shift you'd work, an American job. If you're working night shift, especially post coof, like nothing is going on at night anymore. All right, most of the stores, if not all of the stores in your area, are closed at night. All right, like it depends. It's worse in the rural areas than it is the cities, but a lot of places they've cut back the overall operation hours, mostly because of shrink, but and just overall cost. Keeping things open at night generally, there's not a whole lot of people up at night doing things, so possible revenue is low, and possibility for shrink is high. And because revenue is low, you end up hiring less people and having less people to cover the late night, early morning shifts. So you have less eyes watching for, people trying to steal shit. It's reasonable to, cut back the hours. But if you're stuck working nights, um, you may only have a day off or 2 days off, all right, depending on whatever bullshit the corporation you're working for is doing, how many hours they have you work, and what the real rub actually is. Because a lot of companies will lie to you at the gate, like, all right, you're going to work X amount of days, and then you find out instead of it being 3 or 4 days, you're working 5, 6, maybe even 7 days. All right, because there are tons of companies, especially on the production side, that will push for 7 hour or 7 day mandatory. All right. And a lot of people don't go for that, which is exactly why the turnover continually surges. Okay. That being said, I think I'll end it here. It's about to have been 40 minutes. If you like and appreciate the video, like, favorite, sub, share, do all the things, ring the bell, ding the bell, tickle the bell, do all the things to your heart's content, to the bell. Leave a comment. I do read them. Hype it if it comes up. And if you are interested in personal or business consulting, especially if you're young and you're interested in not fucking up early, all right, because this is the thing. When you fuck up towards the beginning of your life, depending on the scale of the fuck up, that could set you back 10 years. Okay. That's a lot of years to be set back. All right. It's a lot easier to not fuck up at the beginning and to just grow over the years than it is to have to catch up from 10 years of essentially trying to recover from the past mistakes. Okay. Especially if you're young, it's going to be beneficial. Personal consulting, by all means. We do have options. But if you're interested in personal or business consulting, stop by www.spadesconsulting.com without the dash, and I will see you all in the next one.